System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Thursday, February 6th. I am Amin TMK alongside Emoja Lil Tanky Sumler. Hello, Emoja. How are you today on this fine Thursday?
Man, alive. Making it happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, clear your throat, man, so you can stay alive. Yeah, wow. Let's get into this, man. I want to be big news. BB is back. Came back to meet with Donnie J. Donnie pushing the chair in for him, just making sure he's nice and comfy.
Wearing the blue, got Donald wearing the blue tie.
I wear your favorite color, BB.
And I just wonder if this is gonna bring the Democrats around, man. They said blue no matter who. Well,
right. It's that pedantic with them. So let's discuss a little bit, because there was a lot of I think what people think is dangerous. I mean, it is dangerous rhetoric coming from Donald Trump, and sort of this conversation about is it something that Benjamin Netanyahu wanted? Did he like this rhetoric? Did he approve it? He said he did. What do you think is the true meaning of this meeting, and what happened? What transpired? What did you see between Bibi and Trump?
I mean, look, to me, they're talking about Gaza, right? I'm a strategist. It's always about whatever you're not talking about. Gaza's going to be Gaza, Israel went down there. They gave it their best go with everything they could. At one point, the whole weight of the Israeli military machine was focused on them before it got split and sent to Lebanon and the Golan and all these other operations that they're doing. Gaza had to feel the full military weight of Israel. You know what I'm saying? So if they're talking about Gaza, it's not about Gaza. He came, he sat down with the Pentagon. It's just my sneaky suspicion. If anything, what's happening, I think it's Iran. I think that's what's happening. I think they're sitting down and they're planning the next steps to get that provocation popped off and ready. Because I don't think there's much of a separation in the mind of Bibi Netanyahu and Trump as it relates to Gaza. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the things that Trump said is that he's a real estate guy. He's always going to talk about it in those terms. The thing that's irritated me the most is the way that Democratic sympathizers have treated this. Like, oh my God, look at what we told you. Trump is trying to kick all the Palestinians, when it's literally Blinken's plan. Or ostensibly Blinken was the first one to advocate for it. The reality is we don't know whose plan it is. We just know that the plan hasn't changed, even though we have a totally different administration and only the language. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we don't know if it's even an American plan. It may be an Israeli plan that they've given to the Americans, and that plan doesn't change no matter who the American is that's in power. The only difference will be the rhetoric, how brazen the language is, but actions are way worse, And as it stands right now, way more Palestinians were still killed under Biden, and again, and that could change real fast. Who knows? But I don't think there's a real need to talk about. I'm not saying us. Of course, we need to talk about Gaza. But I'm saying I don't think there's a real need for Bibi Netanyahu and Trump to talk about Gaza. I mean, more likely they talked about the West Bank and what the plans for annexation for there are, what next steps look like in that direction. I mean, you can listen to Trump talk about Palestinians. He calls politicians he doesn't like bad Palestinians. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's the thing is, everybody's like, oh, the left thought that Trump would. No, we didn't. We knew exactly what Trump was. For once, we just wanted to not be gaslit all the damn time. You know what I'm saying? Say what it is.
They think that our opposition to the Democrats is not opposition to the Republicans. Our concern is with the safety. Right.
The policy.
The policy is what matters. And one of our patrons mentioned this to me the other day and was really, really good. I really liked it. They were saying that sometimes they get caught up in the noise. And I think that the conversation and people trying to kind of just dissect what happened is really just noise. And what's happening on the ground is the more important part of this. We are going to now at some point see a resuming of the IDF and the forces of Israel to re-engage the Palestinian resistance, Hamas, the Al-Qassam Brigade, all of the things that come with that, which is possibly the Northern Resistance, the Houthis, all these other things. These are the things that matter on the ground. And I think that the Trump rhetoric jumps off the page. And if you're not careful, you'll just start analyzing the noise and the spin instead of analyzing what's on the ground,
and there's a million things you can get from PR. I think about public relations, not Puerto Rico. I thought about, when the exchange happened, right? And the one thing you saw flooding the news was like everybody in the Gaza wearing, the commando outfits. Everybody had, the green the headbands. And I'm thinking to myself, like, politically, is this a win? Like, it doesn't behoove anyone to show your strength right now. You know what I'm saying? And it creates actually more smoke. Like, I think about, as a black boy that grew up in the hood, you wasn't never going to get no show of force where all the bloods just came out with our rags on and, with the rags on. And, you know what I'm saying? You just wouldn't do that. Like, why would you provoke the police in that way? You know what I'm saying? And like, the language is a little bit different because you're talking about, ostensibly land, whereas like, oh, these are our blocks. And so like, I was, like even that, it's like, who does that serve? The people know who the army is. So why even show that kind of a thing when it's only going to provoke, now all the right wing in Israel gets to be like, see, we didn't go hard enough. See, they really are all, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, so like optics, man, that's that whole thing. Like, what Bibi's doing right now is optics. What Trump is doing right now is optics. What Qassam is doing right now is optics. And a lot of it looks tactical as opposed to strategic. I'm not seeing a lot of good strategic decision-making on any of those sides because the only real thing to do is what Mao would do. Disappear into the countryside and rearm and prepare. Because it's not the end of the war. It's not peacetime. It's a ceasefire. Like at the end of the day, and Israel never honors its ceasefires,
I think you made a great point when you talked about like this idea that somehow leftists believe that Trump was going to end the G-side when what we were saying was a ceasefire was done. The same plan that was put forward 9 months ago or 10 months ago, whatever it is, by Blinken. So how come this ceasefire, which it means Palestinians, more of them will live a little bit longer, and again, I'm not here to just, they're celebrating, so I'm going to celebrate as well. I mean, I get what you're saying, obviously on the military side, but like, let's stop. And this just makes me feel like people are just coming from bad faith arguments when they try to insinuate this idea that somehow, like, y'all, Jill Stein and Claudia De La Cruz, their voters didn't even come up to like 2 million votes.
But they the ones that's going the hardest.
Dude.
That's the other thing. They still going hard. I don't hear Kamala saying nothing about this.
No, Kamala's gone. Who?
Jill
Who's
Stein
that?
And the PSL candidate, Claudia De La Cruz, have non-stop been going off on Twitter about these things. So like, again, it's a disingenuous argument to assume they only did these things, one, to embarrass the Democrats, or two, that they didn't really care about these things and they would stop talking about them. Like, activists be on that. And that's the thing you can say about third-party candidates, whatever they're coming from. Even the libertarians, you are a libertarian activist. You are out there really on, states' rights, and you believe that shit. That's not something you say every 4 years. You out there trying to,
exactly.
Vote.
They actually have a platform, and that's what Americans don't understand. Like, you need to have a platform if you're running for something. It can't be your feelings.
Right.
Yeah. And I just, what, and we can close it on this. I mean, what is the future of this conflict in your mind? I mean, are we going to see this ceasefire? Are we going to see it come to an end, and we're just going to return to the status quo of the last, 14 months? What do you see happening?
It's untenable. It would be a mistake to say this has been round one. When we consider how many combatants have been involved, you still have the Houthis down south. You still have, the northern resistance is not crushed, even if they've, been dealt several bad blows. Gaza is still Gaza. It's a pause. And this moment will not stay paused. And also, at the end of the day, the biggest unquestioned conflict that's unresolved is who will be the regional hegemon. And there's several candidates. It could be the Saudis could come out on top. Israel could come out on top. Turkey could come out on top. Iran. That power is not going to be split 4 ways. It might be split 2 ways. It might even be split 3 ways, but it's not going to be split 1 way. If it's split 1 way, it means Israel won. That's the only way that can be. But ultimately, that's the Israeli goal. So the fact that there are 3 other counterweights out there, Israel will never allow that. No matter what language they're using right now, there will be a context where Saudi Arabia gets invaded. There will be a context where Syria gets invaded more than they already are, which is a de facto attack on the Turkish forces. There will be, you know what I'm saying? Iran is still lingering. That's not done. That's not going to end in a negotiation. There will be no negotiation, because at the end of the day, no matter all of the stories that they say, it's Israel. Israel refuses to allow there to be anybody else that is a near peer in that region. And that's the bottom line. You will show that you are subservient to the Israeli project, or you will be seen as a threat. And over a long enough timeline, if you are seen as a threat by the Israeli regime, you are at risk of open war or coup. And they've out and out said as much with Iran, that they want to bring about regime change.
Yeah, I mean, we were listening to the Donnie J talk, and he actually slipped up when he mentioned Egypt. He said the president.
It shows you how deeply unserious. So, notice I didn't even mention Egypt as a possible regional hegemon. There's no reason they shouldn't. I mean, it's an advanced country. They have a huge population, 80 million, something like that. They have a first-rate military. I mean, how about this? It's right under the level of military that the United States and Russia and maybe Turkey would have. So maybe a second-rate military, but that doesn't mean what you think it means. It's still a quite capable force that should be in ship shape, since it's led by a general president, right? They have oil reserves. There's no reason that Egypt should play small, but they are, because they are 100% controlled by general president who does the bidding of his Western backers. They're not even in serious contention for power.
Exactly. I mentioned some other places, Jordan, Qatar.
Yeah, client states.
I mean, and MBS, he does the Erdogan thing once in a while. He condemns the actions of Israel and things like that, but it goes back to symbolism. It's not unless your policy and you enact that policy, everything else is just rhetoric and symbolism. And that's the difference between, what's happening on the ground and what's happening in the PR world of politics and such. But yeah, go ahead.
I'll push back in this one way about MBS, in this one way only. If the Saudis were to officially recognize Israel, every single other Gulf country would fall in line within hours, probably. And they've not done that. And that's power. Erdogan doesn't have that power. If Erdogan, I believe Erdogan has full relations with Israel, even clandestine, where they're sneaking them oil. It couldn't be Erdogan is I recognize Israel. Nothing would change. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If MBS did that, a lot would change. And he hasn't done that. To to his credit,
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. No, great point. Okay, I want to move on a little bit. I want to talk about this. We have this whole idea or the whole belief that the new president would be tamping down or ramping down or whatever you want to call it, the war in the special military operation or the war, whatever, you want to call it. I just call it, that's what Vladimir Putin called it. So I just wanted to let you know, we saying both sides. The money still continues to flow, but the discussions, or at least the rhetoric, has changed a little bit. We've heard, Donald Trump say that Zelensky is ready to talk. Zelensky refuted that. Zelensky's also come out and try to bring up the nuclear capability for Ukraine. And again, I believe it's like Kellogg out there going, no. Where do you see this in terms of, is this ramping down? Are we going to see an end to this conflict, or what is it in your opinion?
It's traditional American diplomatic duplicity. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Trump has this thing where he says things, right? And he wants it to be true, right? And this has damaged him more than once. It's damaged him as far as like intelligence. No one wants to be the person that tells him the bad news, like, oh, this is not true. So everybody kind of emperor's new clothes when it comes to Trump. Nobody is brave enough to really be like, and I think Ukraine is a perfect example of that. He's been fed so much bad information about how badly the Russians were doing. Remember, he gave this whole speech about, oh my God, 1 million Russians have died. It's terrible. It's terrible. And your economy, like, Russia's got like the second fastest growing economy in the world based upon, how that translates to per people purchasing power, PPP, right? If you use that instead of GDP, which means that the people that own stocks are doing good. GDP is normally not a great indicator of how regular people are doing at all, but PPP is per person purchasing power. Russia's second, right? So like he's been fed this bad information. And so now he's in this place where he's like, I can make the war stop immediately. And he realizes that's not true, right? He listens to the next lie from Zelensky, which is, if you just gave me, rush me a whole lot of weapons real quick, the Russians aren't expecting it, and, we'll be able to catch them blind, just like we did in Kursk, or like we did in the Zaporizhia offensive, in 2022, and it's the same lie that he always tells. Zelensky has but one lie. Well, he's got another one, if only we hadn't gave up and that's the other thing I need to say. And it's very important that people listen to this podcast hear me. You would never say Turkey was a nuclear power. You would say the United States, once upon a time, hosted nuclear weapons in Turkey, right? That's the same thing with Ukraine. Ukraine was never a nuclear power. Never. They, as a region of the Soviet Union, had nuclear missiles hosted there. That's not the same. It's like if my friend, who is a very famous and powerful rapper, had a Bugatti and he parked that Bugatti in my garage. My garage is hosted, but it's not my Bugatti. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the other thing. What Zelensky's just incapable of telling the truth. Like, and now, he says so many things that are so dangerous. I'm just truly amazed he's still alive. And I don't mean that like the Russians are going to get him. I really think he's going to have an accident from the West. The way he goes on about, imagine if the supreme leader of Iran talked about, well, now we have to get nuclear missiles to keep ourselves safe from the attacks that we're facing. They would instantly, something would happen, right? Something would happen. Zelensky talks this way all the time. What other country could talk about, well, we have to get nuclear missiles? Like, even the Israelis don't talk this way. They do it, right? To my point earlier about, like, you don't show what you got, you just do it, right? That's what the Israelis did. And they keep plausible deniability about these kind of things to a limited and lessening degree, right? But you have Zelensky openly talking about these things. Like, I don't understand how the IAEE, which is the nuclear body of the United Nations, has not sanctioned him for this type of language consistently, because that is dangerous. That is proliferation talk. And I thought everybody was against that, right? Proliferation is bad. We shouldn't have new nuclear weapons, right? I thought this was like a universally agreed kind of, human condition. It's certainly why they're always mad at North Korea, why they're always saying, oh, we need to invade North Korea. So, like, why is it Western allies get to talk that ostensibly? Proxy is not even an ally. You haven't even reached the level of an ally. You're a proxy. And he talks that way. And the other thing that I thought was very dangerous that he was talking about was the corruption, talking about, we only got so much money from the Americans. Some of that money was gone. Like, bruh, first off, as one of the prime offenders, right, of the grift that he's been on, I mean, wasn't it this summer we were talking about the Ukrainian generals that were getting caught at the border with literally cash, Bugattis stuffed with cash in their trunks?
Rolls Royces popping up in Ukraine. Who's got that type of money?
The United States military doesn't pay its generals like this. How can the Ukrainians afford to do so? So don't act like you didn't understand the graft that was happening all along, and don't pretend that you weren't a part of it. But to stick your finger out and to point back at the Americans to say, you guys are stealing the money, that's dangerous talk, man. That's really dangerous talk. And it's starting to show, because now you finally have the Americans saying, damn, I think we should have elections in Ukraine. It's been a long time, and everybody knows that's the swan song. It's the swan. And he hasn't done what they've asked him to do, which is lower the recruitment range down to 18, even though there's videos every day. Sometimes you see them on inner city left of recruiters literally grabbing people off the streets to force them to go to the military where they're being killed. When it's Zelensky that's talking about only 45,000 Ukrainians have been killed in battle. I mean, how do you reconcile this then? Your army should be plenty big enough. Nobody's died, grabbing people up off the street. I mean, you guys should have like 1.5 million size army by now. You should easily be able to march all the way to Moscow, man. You shouldn't need American help at all.
Yeah, if you are asking for a nuclear weapon, that means you're not winning.
You're not winning.
And again,
I could win if
I had the ultimate weapon. And it just goes to the word. I don't know if you said it outright, but you definitely was hinting at it in your own words. Desperation. It reeks of desperation, and you don't reek of desperation when you're winning. And and I think again, it goes to the point. And you're always watching. We watch the military summary. You can watch it too. Whoever's watching us right now, you don't have to take our word for it. Maybe just the foremost expert in the world, someone who watches this in not real time, but an hour or two delay, that is vetted by several different people, and he often uses the Ukrainian leaning map just to make sure that everyone kind of sees that this is an unbiased take, and that's. I think maybe I didn't mean for that to be the theme of the episode, but it kind of has, is like symbols are symbols. Rhetoric is rhetoric. But makes
war is something you can watch in real time these days. It's not like it was, man. Whether or not you want to do that, that's a different question. But
we do that for you.
We do that for you.
So you can tune into us if you just know that these are our sources. Like, me and Emoja are not just sitting around all the time just looking at, I don't know what people think we're looking at. Like, you can look at them too. Like, and that's, I think the thing is like, we aggregate. That's what Inner City Left does. We aggregate information that we think is poignant. We send it out there. But rarely do you even see myself or Emoja. Maybe on one or two times a week do we post even our own stuff. Let's talk about this, because I talk about it with Palestine and Gaza. So let's talk about what's happening, the reality on the ground in the Donbass, in Chasiv Yar, in these arenas of combat, it looks as if the Ukrainians, pretty much 90% of the time, are getting pushed back, or the land is slowly being taken as the Russians inch closer and closer to the Dnieper River. What do you see on the ground with the current military operation? What are your thoughts on it, and what's happening?
I mean, Russia's getting pretty close to reaching their stated objectives of, reunifying the Donbass, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, Donetsk, all of those areas, the Kherson, they're all pretty much reunified. The Russians, there are places where they can see out to the Dnieper, like with the human eye, unaided. That's how close they are. Again, these are not my facts. These are facts that can be verified if you're going out there and looking at any of the people that are cataloging the day-to-day of what's happening. The Russians are decimating them. Every now and again, the Ukrainians will get a little Hail Mary. They'll sneak a couple of drones across the border, or they may fire and attack them into Russia proper, which, again, it's still not, Trump came in and didn't change that executive order. So, they talked about the freezing of aid, but that never really happened, not in a real way. Israel and Ukraine, pretty much throughout this transition, there hasn't been much. When they say aid has been disrupted, they mean U.S. aid. That means the covert, sneaky stuff. Like, not the actual gun, bang, bang, pow, bomb, boom.
Lethal aid. Yeah.
That has
lethal
not
aid,
changed.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, there it is, right? It hasn't changed, but it hasn't helped. Like, Russia's tactics are getting better and better. They're talking about weapons even I haven't heard of yet. I mean, not to make myself that guy, but even more time than I spend looking at battles, I try to understand what is the state of contemporary war. Russia's using fiber optic UAVs, like drones, that cannot be jammed by any of the Western tech. That's not good. Like, their weapons are getting better and better, and they're showing more and more resistance to NATO's best weapons. Like, NATO has not held back really anything at this point. Their greatest short range and intermediate missiles have been made available to Ukraine. They're being destroyed by Russian air defense, which was already the best in the world and is now even better than it was. They brought new systems online. The S-500 is online, which is like a huge missile defense system. They're just winning. Like, anything other than that, to say it like that, other than the occasional Hail Mary, I mean,
you could also say they've won. I mean,
I wouldn't say they've won, because they haven't. Like, there's still a huge Banderite, population, and that is one of their stated goals. The denazification of Ukraine. That is a real thing. That is not, like, no matter what.
If you get 90% of your wins,
yeah,
you could say that's a win. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that
to victory.
They're on I mean, first of all, how often do you even get every single stated goal? Right. I mean, first of all, that in of itself is rare. Yeah. So the fact that they've
fourth
already
quarter and they're up by 25 points,
right? And I'm just exactly. And there is no way for you. I mean, it goes back to the point of what Adani was saying about taking Gaza, that they're going to do it without American boots on the ground. No, you're not. It's not possible. I'm not saying
do it with American boots on the ground.
You couldn't do it with American boots on the ground. But regardless of, it's a high hope to believe that it would happen. Right. But it's also impossible without that happening. And if it's not going to happen, which it does not look like there is a political will in America to do such a thing, I think that, again, the average American just can see that this was about destabilizing Russia and nothing else. And if it, again, Russia and Turkey and Iran and Saudi Arabia. These countries all have their own plans, their own things that they're trying to cook up, their own schemes. And you're not the only player, okay? Just because you may be the biggest player or whatever it is, there's other guys on the court, there's other guys on the field, there's other people in the arena. And Americans, I think the American exceptionalism leads them to believe that, well, Trump can do it and he can say this and he can make this happen. But the rest of the world is caught up in many ways. And I don't see that occurring,
One thing I would say is the biggest difference between Trump and Biden so far, other than the rhetoric, I would say is the way they use weapons. Biden was much more of a send the army in kind of guy, send in an airstrike. And although Trump has shown no reticence to do these kind of things, primarily he sees himself as an economic warrior. Instead of gun wars, he wants trade wars. He doesn't want to be seen as the man that killed all these people. Right? Even though you're killing people, right? Sanctions kill people. It looks different. It doesn't look like you shot a 3-year-old in the head with a sniper rifle. It looks like, oh my God, malnutrition, which happens all over the world. If only they were the Western world, we're better than that here, right? It looks.
What are the true victims of capitalism? They never want to discuss that aspect.
Trump works. You know what I'm saying? And again, everything is the opposite of what you say. So when he consistently says, I'm a man of peace, you should prepare yourself for wars. Trump is about to bring big wars because he says things with his mouth that he cannot make true. Even though the American establishment and the West by de facto goes along and tries their best to manifest the things that he says, there are people that are not going to do that. Xi's not going to do that. Putin is not going to do that. Qassam is not going to do that. Iran is not going to do that. Even to some degree, we've seen within the West, there are some people, the Danish, we're not giving you Greenland. You know what I'm saying? There are people that won't do that. Claudia Sheinbaum, has pushed back. And so there are people that are already suggesting Trump is past his power boost. The ability to come into president and make things happen immediately because it's already not happened so many times. When we talked about it in the last podcast, when the Colombian president is like, bro, even if you kill me, the people is with me, what? You know what I'm saying? Like,
even the Canadians, man.
Right.
They're looking at you in the face. You have these tariffs, these 25% tariffs that you was ready to throw on Canada and Mexico, and both of their leaders was like, excuse me, we're putting tariffs on your situation as well.
Right.
So it's not that same, like maybe there really was never that type of reverence. It was just pure fear or whatever it may be, but it's certainly getting to the point where the rest of the world doesn't look at America the same. And rightfully so. They are a diminishing power.
Yeah, what's his name? The dude who was the father in that movie, Romeo Must Die. I can't think of his name. The bald head black guy. And remember, he was on that talk. He was on the news show one day, and there was like, there's a white guy, and he's like, I don't think it's fair that we got these rappers all the time, using the N-word, and he's like, so say it, just say it, right? That's where the world is now with Trump. Just do it. Yeah, we'll tariff you. Do it.
Yeah.
That's where we at with it.
Yeah. Facts.
And that's going to lead to war. Because Trump's not the kind of man that can bear humiliation. He's just not.
And it leads to further diminishing
of it, and it makes him angry. Exactly.
It just diminishes them furthermore. I mean, we talked about the 4 years of Biden just being the worst in terms of the diminishing power of the United States globally. And Trump is now doing that as well with these silly ideas. I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all the good things. Check out our Podbean. Hit us up on our website, innercityleft.com. Let's give a shout out to our patrons. because you can be a patron too. Hey, there we have a growing, wonderful, lovely relationship and budding community with our patrons. So let's give them a shout out. Shout out to History Will Absolve Us, Sophia San Marco, Kate Sauer, Monica Marcial, Laura Joel, Nikki Infield, Nat the Rat, Lucy Newman, Samantha Guerrero, Dumpy, Tom LeBeau, True Crimes of the Empire, W22, Jake Alart 94, No Ground, RK, Paula Poderosa, Alyssa Piercy, Lauren Bullock, Suzette Top, Dennis Amadeus, Y'all the Real Heroes, Emoja. Thoughts? Final thoughts.
Man, yeah, we survived January, man. The longest month of all time. I feel like it was 80 days, man. Oof.
It was quite the month. But we made it, and we're going to make it through another month, and hopefully y'all will make it through another month.
Not going for Micah.
So, the nothing grows, yes. For Emoji Latinky Somewhere, I'm a Mean TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.